Okay, so one thing we're doing is we're interested in deep pelagic fishes, and specifically the larvae of those fishes and the zooplankton, which are their prey. And one thing we learned from Deepwater Horizon is that we know very little about the deep ocean. Most of our knowledge is on coastal oceans and upper oceans, whereas over 90% of the Gulf of Mexico is below 200 meters. And there's been some great work by Tracy Sutton and the Deep End Consortium looking at bigger fishes. So we saw a data gap where we could add zooplankton and larval fishes to that, and really benefiting from some samples collected by the Natural Resources Damage Assessment that was done in 2010 and 2011. So the samples were already collected. It seemed like a good fit for us to go and make hay with those data. And specifically, our project is looking at trophic ecology, so the food web dynamics, who's eating who with the larvae, how that connects with the upper ocean. And a lot of these deep pelagic fishes migrate vertically every night. So they come up to the surface waters, they consume a lot of plankton, and they bring all that energy and carbon down to the deep sea. And so we're filling in that data gap as to how do the zooplankton, which are the food for a lot of fishes, even the larval fishes, how does that tie in with everything? And ultimately the goal is to make a food web model that shows these connectivities and is able to sort of make some predictions based on what we know now. So we're gathering data from a lot of different sources that were already collected. So the first thing is it's taken us quite a while to merge all those disparate data sets together. So we feel like we're in a good place there. The models are going to be very hungry for data. Our preliminary analyses looking at the larval fishes is that they're really dominated. They do change. The community structure that we find changes seasonally and also with depth, so not all of them are doing full migrations. And actually most of the larvae do stay within that upper 200 meters. So one thing we're interested in going forward is when do they start doing that full migration that the adults start to do? And so we're finding that more or less as the larval stages, they're constricted to the upper 200 meters, some exceptions, and that they're really dominated by a few groups, the lanternfishes, the bristlemouths, the hatchet fishes. These guys really dominate that community, and there are many species among those families. So those are some of the major findings to date that we're looking at and exploring more. So the real key is the model's the selling point for the whole project. So we're gathering the data. We're going to look at the diets of these larval fishes. What are they eating? How much is the connection between the upper Gulf and the deep pelagic region? And we're going to feed all these data into the model. Tracy Sutton, again, in Deep Sea, they've been very supportive. They're adding data, helping our modelers put all this together. So what we hope to have is a really good understanding of the coupling between the surface ocean, the upper 200 meters, where we're pretty well studied relative to the deep water, how these things are coupled. And going forward, the idea then is once we have a really nice model, then we can play scenarios. We can say, okay, now inject an oil spill. We know how the system, we think we know how it works. Now what's going to happen when there's an oil spill or a hurricane, or pick a perturbation to the system and then find out how that's going to change the food web or the contributions, relative contributions of deep pelagic versus the upper pelagic. What we hope to is the model becomes a real tool. And so in the unfortunate event there is another oil spill, now we have a good understanding from the model, from all the data inputs as to how we think the system works, and now we can inject an oil spill into that scenario, duration, where it's at in the water column, deep, shallow, wherever, and then start to have predictive power as to the impacts of the food web. Because in Deepwater Horizon, we were really taken off guard. People asked about the deep ocean, which was where that spill occurred, and we really didn't have the answers. So now the onus is on all of us who've been funded for these past years by GoMRI and other resources to really have the answers for next time. And I think as a whole, and our project included, we're making good progress toward that.